All right, welcome back. It's almost getting tiring to bring up this next subject, but we just can't help it as it's now really beginning to hurt the very backbone of this country. And I'm talking about American agriculture, right? A report published Wednesday by the free market think tank Buckeye Institute is titled "The Net Zero Climate Control Policies Will Fail the Farm." Now, this report outlines how farmers will see their operational costs rise by an estimated 34% as a result of net zero ESG policies. While the report states its findings were predictable and unsurprising, it added that the U.S. policymakers seem unwilling to address or even acknowledge them. That's the key right there, folks. Unwilling to even address or acknowledge them. Now, is the peer pressure to acquiesce to these draconian ESG policies that tough that we can't extract ourselves from its political net zero grip? Well, we know one person who will definitely have an opinion on this. And as a matter of fact, she brought it to our attention a few years before the rest of the market did. She was the one that brought us ESG. Welcome into the show, Rebecca Walser. Rebecca, thank you very much for being on.
Glad to be here with you, Scott.
The kicker was the last part of that whole study that says that they're unwilling to make any change. I mean, what's going on? You tell me.
Yeah, so they actually believe, and when we say they, we're talking about the globalist group that really believes, and they truly believe that the science proves that if we don't reduce the temperature, Scott, that the earth will in fact burn up, that we will not have oxygen, we will not have our fresh water, we won't have our resources. And so one of the two areas that they've identified is unfortunately agriculture. So what you're seeing now is you saw John Kerry basically say there is no net zero if we don't include agriculture. So beyond just vegetables and farming, they're also talking about obviously the cows, the methane gas, all of these things. So this is why you're starting to see a sincere push to fake meat, eating bugs, because they're talking about if we're really going to move to net zero, we have to eliminate farming and farming of animals. And then when you turn into the vegetables, it is the fertilizer, Scott, that they are basically stating that these farmers will not be able to use. And when you say, it's a 34% cost increase, it's really misleading in the sense that farmers can't afford to have 34% taken away from their bottom line. These people, if they have one bad season, they have to save up multiple seasons to cover, they don't have an extra 34% profit margin that they can just slice off and say, oh, less fertilizer, less product. That's not viable. And so what you're seeing is the French farmers protesting, the Dutch farmers protest, the German farmers protesting, and actually they're actually coming away negotiating some deals with their governments, rightfully so. But here's the thing. This is the problem with the ESG movement. They have so convinced enough people that are in positions of power that we must eliminate all carbon, or at least carbon to X extent. They haven't bothered to tell us what's the alternative. What's the alternative way that we're going to power our cars? Because we know that the entire United States cannot move to EV fleets. We don't have the electrical grid that will support all EV. So they know that in the transition to green, we will lose a lot of our first world technology and abilities. And that's why they're now coming out and finally admitting that it's no travel that's not necessary. It's business air travel only, basically. There's no more flights for vacation. I can't go to Asia if it's not business or a conference or whatever. And that's 99% of people aren't going and flying because of business. It's because of personal reasons. Not 99%, but you know what I'm saying. So they're basically what they have done, and they've gotten away with it, is let's move to this green technology. It's not sufficient. It will not replicate the current way of life. Oh, well, we don't care. And now we're going to attack the food supply chain. We're going to attack farming. We're going to attack animals. And we're going to also tell you that, no, you're not going to get a replacement. It's going to be fake. It's going to be nut-based. It's going to be bugs. And just deal with it. And it's finally maybe the American people, I think the border has really woken people up to something's going on. Something doesn't seem normal. And now they're starting to really get maybe out of their social media and read stories like this and say, wait a minute, you're now saying it is bad to grow actual plants that the earth was designed to grow? I'm not understanding.
Yeah, you know what? And it's hard for me not to go down that hole or that nefarious route that says that, you know what, every time I talk about it on my show here, it seems as though those global elites are going after one of two things, either the food or the fuel. All right, because you just mentioned farmers don't have 34% that they can just take off their bottom line. But it's, on top of that, if they have to, they're going to produce less. Right. So so all the costs for everybody else out there is going to go through the roof because, I mean, this has already happened in Sri Lanka and Ghana. They went under because they only were producing 30% or 70% of what they used to. They were starving their own citizens. They couldn't take it anymore. So now we have examples, yet our legislatures still are all too happy to go down that route. And I hope you're right that people are waking up to it because slowly but surely ESG, DEI, all those 3-letter or 2-letter acronyms are now starting to be looked at as maybe not so great, right? You got about 30 seconds.
Well, you just made me think, Scott, when Congress started off talking about the border, I know it's not ESG, but when they started talking about the border, they said, the Democrats want Ukraine funding, the Republicans want Israeli funding, and the American people want our border funded. So it was supposed to be a funding for our border and also Ukraine and also Israel. Guess what they've resolved to in the Senate? Forget the American border. We agree on the Ukraine funding. We agree on the Israeli funding. Let's just fund the other borders of the world and let's not worry about the United States. So the United States federal government is not interested in the United States. It is interested in a lot of other things, special interests, and this is both sides of the aisle. I'm talking both sides. It is systemic, and it has got to stop. And this is just another way for them to get more control. And it's unfortunate. I'm not saying that the United States Congress wants control, but I'm saying that there are powers that be that are trying to push these mechanisms, and there are no solutions. There's no additional food available. Here's all the food you get to eat. No, you're right. Sri Lanka was a failure. Ghana was a failure, and people will starve. They will starve because guess what? It was fertilization and the industrialization of farming that expanded the food supply. So now if you take that away, people will die.
I agree. They've broken the social contract. You talk about it all the time. You are 100% right. Thank you very much, Rebecca.